Now I guess most of you have already watched the EVGA GPU Finale video, which was posted by Gamers Nexus like a few days ago. As I wasn't in the main spotlight on that video, I thought about sharing my own experiences and thoughts about the whole event that was held in the EVGA Taiwan office at the early part of December of last year. We were actually planning to do some kind of a live event for a very long time. We discussed about it with Vince for a very long time, and if we didn't have the COVID-19 pandemic and all of the travel restrictions, I'm sure we would have done this kind of a live event already at the launch of the RTX 30 series of graphics cards, the RTX 3090 KINGPIN especially. But luckily, Taiwan actually lifted their very tight entry requirements for travelers on the mid part of October last year. So we managed to book this event for the early days of December. The event was held in EVGA's Taiwan office in the gaming arena, which you may have already seen on the Overclocker video, if you remember that one from 2018. They demonstrated the Overclocker device in that very same space. Zhonghe itself didn't really look that interesting from like tourists' perspective. It's pretty like industrial area and there aren't many stores or bars at all. Even the grocery stores are just very tiny, like 7-Elevens and Family Marts, but for our purpose it was pretty alright. As KINGPIN's personal lab and the RMA repair center were close by, it's pretty amazing if you are, let's say, Biso Biso and you accidentally kill 1 or 2 graphics cards. It might be possible to get them back up and running in very short notice, thanks to all of that. So the whole purpose of the event was the launch of the Z790 Dark KINGPIN and classified motherboards. So they were finally coming out to the market, and we wanted to be able to demonstrate the best aspects of the motherboard during the Overclock and Give live stream that was held at the end of the whole week. So it was held on the Saturday morning, so on 10th of December if you are located in Asia, and during the evening of Friday the 9th if you are located in the USA, especially the western part of USA. So the event featured me, Biso Biso from South Korea, Cens from Germany, obviously KINGPIN himself from the USA, as well as Jacob from EVGA from California. Gamers Nexus actually visited the event, and it came to me as a surprise if you ask me, because many of us, we weren't like so fully prepared at the early stages of the week. Especially me, I wasn't really prepared for that one, but it was pretty amazing to meet the entire Gamers Nexus filming crew who were present in Taiwan at the time. So Gamers Nexus visited the venue on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we started the whole event on Monday morning, pretty much, all of the overclocking I mean. I wanted to focus on 2D as I had the best experience with Hynix A-die memory overclocking. Like 1 or 2 weeks before this event I managed to pass 9200 mega transfers per second as the first person in the world in different benchmarks, and I was the first one to be able to pass 18,000 points on the Geekbench 3 memory score. So I really wanted to focus on that part, and we actually had quite a few of 1300K CPUs for the event, and we even had one of the just released 1300KS CPUs. So I first went through all of the CPUs, but we couldn't really find a golden one that could challenge all of the available like top scores in different benchmarks. The best CPUs that we managed to find were obviously the KS, and one, I think it was 1300K, which was brought to the event by Cens from Germany, and I think he found that CPU from eBay. Both of those two could do like 7.5 to 7.6 for the P cores in tests like Cinebench R20, but that's really not enough, because the top CPUs, the best engineering sample 1300K CPUs can run those tests up to like 7.7 plus. The only good score I managed to pass with the KS was the GPU Pi 1 billion test with only 8 cores running, so in 8 core category at 7.733 gigahertz, and that gave me a rank 4 score in GPU Pi 1 billion in the 8 core category for Intel CPUs, and rank 2 score for the 1300KS model. So my result is pretty much up there along with the very best 1300K CPUs in the world. So that was pretty good result if you ask me. But it's definitely not enough to produce any kind of like earth-shattering new world records. So I decided to focus more on the memory because that's definitely the most interesting part of this whole Raptor Lake platform from daily users' perspective. If an average Joe buys this whole platform and let's say like 1300K CPU, he will very quickly notice that he cannot overclock the CPU like pretty much at all. The CPU temperatures are just through the roof already from the get-go. Stock voltage might already be at like 1.35 to 1.4 volts when everything is at stock. So if the temperatures are already at like 100 degrees Celsius, you can't really do much better than what the CPU is already running at stock. So the first thing most people will actually do with these CPUs is undervolting the CPU first to values like 1.25 and then checking, is the CPU still stable at the stock frequencies? Could it maintain 5.5 GHz on all of the available P cores at the same time, and maybe try 5.6, but that's it. So the very simple answer to overclocking potential on these Raptor Lake CPUs is that the difference between the worst CPU and the best CPU is probably lowest than ever. I've tested so many of these CPUs already and every single one of them can pass Citybench R20 with 5.7 on all of the P cores with voltage of like 1.35 to 1.4 volts on very strong water cooling. Some CPUs might run 5.8 all day, some CPUs might run 5.8 like partially, so one attempt might pass, the second one might fail, and some CPUs will just fail 5.8 straight away. And then it is nearly impossible to find a CPU that can run 5.9 happily, and that's the target level you need if you want to find a record capable CPU. There are CPUs that can do it. For example, I saw a very interesting 1300 KF CPU, an engineering sample one by a guy who I know who is located in Thailand. He could run 5.9 on water cooling before delidding with good voltage, and after delidding he could run daily stable clock speed of 6.2 to 6.3 even in games with good temperatures and so on, but with relatively high voltage of like 1.45 or so. It is nearly impossible to match the best engineering sample CPUs with retail CPUs this time around. So for EVGA it's pretty hard to compete against companies like Gigabyte, Asus, MSI, etc. because EVGA might only get like a few dozen of those engineering sample 1300K CPUs, whereas those largest companies might get like 300. So the only thing that an average Joe can do to really improve the overall performance of a daily system, for example, is by maxing out the memory. That is really where different motherboard models can show their differences. The JEDEC or SPD speed of DDR5 is somewhere around like 5000 or 5600, and many of the motherboard or most of the motherboard models can only do between like 6000 and 7000 mega transfers per second, but definitely more closer to 6000 instead of 7000. And the very best Z790 motherboard models out there that are usually equipped with just 2 memory slots, so single slot per channel design, so models like Dark KINGPIN, Apex, Tachyon, Aqua OC and so on, they can run Hynix A-die based memories daily stable even at DDR5 8000 and beyond. The highest frequency I managed to do myself has been at 8200, but with realistic voltage of like 1.4 to 1.5. I've seen higher memory frequencies being demonstrated, but usually the memory voltage has been just way too high for the vast majority of users, like 1.55 or 1.65 or even 1.7. That's definitely too high. I would stay at somewhere between like 1.4 to 1.5. So I tried to do very high frequency Hynix A-die like memory frequency demos on different benchmarks during the event, both during the Gamers Nexus content and as well as during the live stream. I mainly aimed for 9000 plus frequencies, and especially for 9200. The issue was that I was mainly like experienced with the Hynix OEM green memory sticks, as they are a little bit different to the ones that are sold by the more notable memory vendors. G.skill was the main sponsor of the event, and we only managed to find like 2 kits that could do like 9000 plus on LN2, but they weren't as like straightforward as the green OEM memory kits. So the issue I had during Gamers Nexus part of the whole event was that I had very hard time getting 9000 to work on the first pre-tested kit. It was very hard to get 9000 past the memory training, even though it was pre-tested. So what we had to do after a while was that we had to swap to the second kit on the fly, and we managed to do a very brief 9000 demo at CAS 32 and so on. I originally aimed for CAS 31 as that has been the main CAS latency I've been using for 9200 plus demos. And I was able to show the best screenshot that was done at 9200 and so on. But it can happen, you cannot always win, but at least we managed to demonstrate something. But that part wasn't included in the Gamers Nexus final video, but they might release more content from the event on the GN Extras side channel. That's at least what they mentioned on their Twitter page, I think. So just stay tuned for it. I'm sure they will release at least something. So Biso Biso mainly focused on 3D, as he really loves 3D. He tested 2 or 3 4090 EVT graphics cards, and he sadly killed 3 of those cards, which was kind of sad. And Cens was kind of the mix of us 3. He tried both 2D, but he mainly focused on 3D. When the Gamers Nexus was visiting the event, they covered the GPU die lapping topic together, as that was the first thing they did during the event. So on Monday morning, as I was testing the CPUs and so on, they were just lapping 3 out of 4 of those cards we had for the event, and they did the GPU lapping well, if you ask me. They are very good at that whole thing. Biso Biso, for example, is very amazing when it comes to GPU die lapping. But sadly, Biso Biso killed 2 of those cards during the night between Tuesday and Wednesday. I mean, they actually had to change plans for the content they were about to film. So they decided to make the main topic of the whole content about going to the RMA repair center and trying to get one of those cards, the best card, back up and running. And luckily they managed to repair it. They gave the card back to Biso Biso, and they actually broke the 3D Mark Speedway record score by using that card. So they did it together with Cens, and that was pretty amazing result, if you ask me. I tested one of those 4090 cards myself later that week, I think on Thursday and Friday, and I managed to do a pretty nice result myself as well. And I got different scores of like 11,615, 680, and I got one bugged result at 12,030. There's a difficult topic about these RTX 40 series of graphics cards, and that is that the memory can actually bug pretty severely if you are very close to instability, and it can happen on any cooling. So what happened was that my run actually bugged towards the end. Pasi from UL Benchmark, so the current name for the previous FutureMark company, he actually checked many of the scores that were posted on the Hall of Fame, and he could see that my run was bugged towards the end of the test. So the hard thing about this whole 40 series or 4090 is that you can actually bug at some very specific part of those 3D tests, and you don't always see it. Most of the time you will see it, you will just see that the screen just goes full on with artifacts. The screen that is being rendered isn't being rendered correctly, so you can know that the run will be very good, or the score will be very good, because it has been bugged. So that score was obviously taken down, but at least I managed to do something. So the card was definitely interesting, and towards the live stream which we had on Saturday morning, everything went nearly perfect. I was testing the memory, I was aiming for 9000 plus and 9200 plus. Cens was trying for best performance in 3D Mark Speedway and Pole Royal, and Biso Biso was trying the 3D Mark TimeSpy Extreme overall or 2-way SLI record by using Z690 Dark KINGPIN motherboard and 1300K CPU. So far it still seems that you cannot run SLI on the Z790 motherboards, as you need some kind of a SLI key to be able to run it. So he was using the Z690 version, but I think in the end they are pretty much the same as the CPU was the same, and I think the Z690 board can reach the same end frequency at least for the CPU, but memory will be a bit better on the Z790 version. I managed to run DDR5 up to 9200 successfully in AIDA64. I wanted to use AIDA64 memory benchmark because that's the test the vast majority of normal users usually prefer to use compared to something like Geekbench 3. AIDA64 gives you a pretty rough idea about your memory performance. It tells you a lot more compared to something like Geekbench 3. Geekbench 3 is just some very basic like number result, which many people don't even understand, but AIDA64 gives you some rough idea like bandwidth numbers in megabytes per second and a pretty good like latency value at the end. This was the best screen I managed to save like successfully. So this was at DDR5 9200 cache 31 47 47 38 command rate 2. So this was initially the configuration I was aiming for when I was doing the content with Gamers Nexus, so with Steve. I almost passed 9250 with the same timings, but it always crashed at the copy part of the test, but it was very close. These numbers are already very good, so 150.19 gigabytes per second for the read and a whopping 42.8 nanosecond result for 9200 and command rate 2. If we could run command rate 1 at this kind of frequency, the latency value would be at 30 point something, so that would be an enormous score for DDR5. Cens was aiming for very high score on the Speedway, as I already said, and he actually did the best score during the live stream, which was 11,860 points, and it's still the rank 1 score on 3D Mark Speedway Hall of Fame. Biso Biso managed to get the TimeSpy Extreme global top score during the event as well, or during the live stream I mean. So December 10th, 2022, 25,110 points at 2600 MHz on the core and 1500 on the memory, as well as the normal TimeSpy overall top score. Now Biso Biso actually lost the TimeSpy Extreme top score to this Chinese guy, but only because of this CPU over here. The AMD Threadripper, the latest version, so the 5995WX, just gives you an enormous physics score, which will boost the overall score by quite a bit. He only used water cooling, but because of the higher CPU score, the overall score is just so much better. If we quickly compare these two scores like side by side, if we take a look at the Chinese result first, graphics score at a bit under 25,000 with cards running at 2200 on the core and 1490 on the memory-ish, and CPU score at a whopping 32,121 points compared to Biso Biso's 27,106 points at 2600 and 1500 on the card, but the CPU score only at 17,720. If Biso had the latest Threadripper CPU also on LN2, his overall score would be at somewhere around 30,000. So it kind of tells you how important the CPU is on this test. I'm very happy that we managed to do everything perfect during that live stream. Good memory, Speedway top score, TimeSpy Extreme overall top score, as well as the normal TimeSpy overall top score. Even though as those card results don't really tell that much about the motherboard models like performance, so the dark KINGPINs and the classifieds, it was very awesome to see things like that happen during a live stream. So the whole event was a pretty nice success towards the end, and it was amazing to meet the entire Overclocking team, all of the engineers at EVGA and the whole Gamers Nexus filming crew, so like Steve and the other guys in the background. It's very hard to say what will happen in the future with EVGA. I really hope they would hold on to their motherboard segment, as if they stop doing both motherboards and graphics cards, and if they only start doing like power supplies and computer peripherals, that would kind of end the connection between the original status of the brand and its current form. EVGA means Extreme VGA, so EVGA kind of started as an enthusiast component brand. If they only start doing like power supplies and peripherals, although they are very good like product segments, they are financially a lot better than NVIDIA graphics cards, for example. It kind of makes the whole brand a bit more like, I don't know if the correct word is like boring, but not as exciting as what it used to be. But I fully understand their decision why they want to stop dealing with NVIDIA, because NVIDIA has been giving them so much trouble. It's very hard to make any kind of money from graphics cards when NVIDIA is actually competing against its own vendors with the Founder Edition card models. So it's very hard situation if you ask me. But the last option for EVGA would be the motherboard segment. It's actually been doing very well. The only issue what I don't like about it is the global sales. The motherboards are usually well available in the US, but the availability in Europe is generally very bad. They do arrive in Europe, but they usually arrive very late and in limited quantities. So many people often comment on my videos, for example, that, hey, where can you even buy one of these motherboard models in Europe? So it's very hard to answer questions like that, but we'll see. So we'll see what happens. And okay, that's pretty much it. So let me know what you think. What do you think about my comments and experiences of this whole drama about EVGA ending its partnership with NVIDIA, and hearing about my comments and experiences of the EVGA event in Taiwan. And yeah, make sure to watch the EVGA Finale video posted by Gamers Nexus if you haven't already watched it. You can also find the Overclock and Give live stream video from EVGA's Twitch page. I can provide a link for it down in the description box of this video, so definitely check them out if you are interested in them. And yeah, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I hope you enjoyed to watch this video and hear about my comments. And thanks for watching one of my videos once again, and I will see you on the next one.